Genscape. Today's presentation is titled Transmission RT, Access Real-Time Transmission, Congestion, and Flows. Our presenters today are Bill Townsend, Managing Director of Power Product Development, and Natalia Mesvirashvili, Regional Director for PJM. Before we begin, please note that you can submit questions throughout the webinar. We'll do our best to answer them at the end. Also, if you have a question you'd like to keep confidential, please just indicate that when you submit your question, and we'll give you a separate callback. We are recording the webinar, and we'll send that along with all the slides to all attendees via an email within 24 hours of this webinar. With that, we're ready to begin, and I'd like to turn it over to you now, Bill. So let's get started.
Thanks a lot, David. What we'll do today is, as David said, we'll be talking about our latest product offering, Transmission RT, which is really focused on the high voltage grid and showing actual power flows there. But to start out, I'd like to give a little context to it of what Genscape's all about and what's our mission here with this product line. For over 10 years, we've been really the name known in the industry for supplying real-time data on power plant generation trips and disruptions to the supply side of the equation. We have a plan now to really instrument the entire supply chain from supply through demand and provide the fundamentals, the actual fundamentals to the market so that we take the guesswork out of what might be happening with the physical world, and you can use that information to trade effectively and manage your position. So right now our focus is on building out this transmission component. Currently we're monitoring over 426 generating facilities, or about 500 gigawatts of capacity. With this launch, we're now able to display real-time power flows on over 1,400 high-voltage transmission lines, and we'll take a look at that live in just a few minutes. And into the future, we see this moving further downstream and starting to monitor demand as well. In fact, right now we've got a few facilities that we monitor to test out prototypes and concepts, such as monitoring consumption at an electric arc furnace, a paper mill, and we have some ambitions to be able to monitor load in aggregate that's smaller than an ISO zone but larger than a substation, so something like a metropolitan area, and be able to provide real-time actual load on something like that. And that's in our research queue for the future. So this gives you a context of where we are with our product roadmap and where we're going and why. So today we're going to look at what does our network look like in terms of transmission coverage, what we've done to enable you to use this data both in our interface and also in other ways in your own system. And then we'll look at examples of what we believe this data shows in terms of specific events that we believe create opportunity and bring to light information that in the past you either had limited information or you're perhaps guessing or inferring things from other information where we can provide actual. So we'll look at the series of examples on an early return to service of a transmission line outage, response of power flows to a weather front passing through a geographic area. We'll look at the most congested flow gates in the PJM MISO areas and how they play with some of the seams issues between those regions, and look at a unit trip earlier this week. And then lastly, just a quick demonstration of the historical data that's now available on the platform. We've been monitoring some of these power plants for over 10 years. We have a very rich and deep history of operational data that we want to bring to bear for our customers. Then I'll hand it over to Natalia, and she's going to show you how her team in the PJM desk used the actual power flow data to recalibrate their model that they use to forecast validate and day-ahead PJM hub prices, and she'll walk us through that process. And then we'll wrap up with just a quick sort of schedule of releases for the coming year in terms of new content features, and then we'll take some questions and answer questions at the end. So first, let me talk about the coverage. What's the extent of our coverage currently? And we'll talk about our plans for the build-out that we'll be pursuing over the next year or 2 years and a half. Right now, you'll see here the table on the left side here shows you the breakout of our current power plant coverage by region. Overall, we've got about 44% of the capacity in the United States covered, and a few plants in Canada. These statistics include both our EMF and our infrared technology. And I'll describe about that a little bit more in detail as we go through the presentation. On the right here, you see our breakout of transmission line coverage. And these numbers are almost increasing faster than I can keep this presentation up to date. Our team is out adding between 10 to 20 lines per month in terms of siting new facilities. We are leveraging the backbone of our generation network, and let me explain what that means. When we monitor a power plant, we have a technology that measures the electromagnetic field on a transmission line. And historically, essentially, we surround a power plant with these monitors where every line emanating from the power plant has an EMF monitor on it. We take the signals from all those monitors and calibrate them against historical generation from that facility that we obtain through a public source like the EPA SEMS data or EIA monthly generation statistics. What we've done is taken that same hardware that's been out there for so long detecting plant output, and we've recalibrated each one of those monitors just for the line that it's on. So we now can confidently say, here's what's going on this particular power line, and here's what's going on with the entire facility. So this has given us a big leg up in terms of covering transmission for generator-connected lines. We essentially inherit a very large network that we've just recalibrated to those lines. On top of that, now we're expanding our network to transmission lines that are not connected to generators, that are either large intertie lines, high voltages, or are often called as binding constraints or are key contingency lines for binding constraints. So those are sort of the criteria that we use to build out the network. So putting all this data into the application, into the PowerRT, the map that you're so familiar with seeing on trading floors around the industry, we've had to one, get all that content in, and then two, develop some new tools to be able to use that content, so we just didn't create a screen that was a mess. So you can see here the new content in there, the power line flows, and so we've got the check mark next to that. Later this year, in intervals of 6 to 8 weeks, we're rolling out new content and functionality throughout the year. So our intent this year is to roll out ISO prices into the application, the ISO published binding constraints, and then the outage schedules for transmission line outages, and just continually layer those content sets into the application so that you can see them all together. In terms of functionality, in this release we'll look at today, we've added in real-time charts and real-time data grids. We've moved to a windowed environment, so you can create windows of these different things, size them and place them on the screen where you like and save them. And we've added some more complex data filtering where you can create custom criteria for filtering the data. And then lastly, we'll go over downloading data from the application. We've essentially come to a principle, if you can see data in a chart, you can download it into Excel or onto your own machine and use it outside of our application. Later on this year, we'll be rolling out watch lists, which essentially allow you to create custom lists of plants, lines, substations, any entity you'll see in our product. And alerting on transmission lines will roll out later in February, and we're pretty excited about that release that's upcoming. So what can you do with this? We built this product with these folks in mind, people trading, cash hub, virtuals, nodal spreads, FTRs, up to contracts. These are the users that we're really focused on trying to meet their needs with this application. And we believe returns to services, flow patterns change in real time with actual data without guessing or modeling or estimating in order to adjust your positions, react to the market, either through your trading positions or operationally within the trading day. So let's look at what we can do with this with a series of examples, and then we'll jump into the live product. So this first example was earlier this week in PJM. We had a tie line Branchburg Ramapo go down for maintenance. The interesting thing here was, if you're not familiar with it, this little sort of type is the format that PJM publishes. It's outage schedule. Those of you that see this daily should recognize it. And they basically said that they were going to be down for a period from early in the morning on February 4th to the afternoon of February 5th. And we have a monitor on this particular line, and you can see the line is located here in central Jersey and connects up to southern New York. We started detecting a signal about 5 hours before PJM notified the market that the outage was complete and that the line was returned to service. So what you see here in this chart, where it's flat line on 0 is that outage period, and then our detection of this at 14:57, 5 hours before the ISO made that information public. This is a pretty common occurrence, either seeing early returns to service or late returns to service, and we're going to send you the actuals on this stuff, and you've got 5 hours to make use of that information. The second example, this is actually sent from a customer who was trialing the product and allowed us to share it, which I thought was really interesting. You can see from the large map in the lower left-hand, there's a cold front, and that's the temperature gradient, and I just drew the yellow line on top of it to give you some visual cue as to where that front is, moving from west to east. And what he pointed out here in the quote, he says, Ohio River generation flowing to the Midwest instead of to eastern load centers, possibly setting up a bullish west hub congestion in PJM. In the blow-up, you can see what he's really looking at are these red lines. And when we open the product, I'll show you more about the coloring scheme. Red is essentially showing unusual loading activity, and the green and yellow is showing lighter loads. So you see the more darker reds pointing to the northwest, and then the flows moving to the east and the northeast are the lighter colors. This is a pattern that would be considered unusual for this region. And if that pattern were to reverse, it might cause congestion. On this particular day, you can see from the charts here showing the real-time and day-ahead spread and the cumulative, which is the purple line. It doesn't look like that bullish condition that he had hoped for materialized, but the point I want to make is that you're taking the guesswork out of this because you can see this progress throughout the day in very small time increments and know whether or not that power is flowing east or west and responding to that weather pattern moving. The next example here shows a constraint in PJM that's occurring quite often, and the quote here is from our lead MISO analyst here, Lauren, who is talking about the frequency of occurrence of this. Is somebody typing on the other end? I don't know who else's mic is on, but if you could please mute, that would be fantastic. And this is showing the Monticello East Winnemac. I think actually this constraint was called even earlier today. An interesting thing about this is it's a 138 line that often is the contingent elements are higher voltages. In this case that we're looking at, you can see it's the Burr Oak Schaefer 345. It's often also the Rockport Jefferson line to the south. We have actual data on all of those elements. So this is a constraint in which you can see real time what's going on with that monitored line, what's going on with the contingent elements, and as Lauren pointed out, there's some key thresholds here where we notice binding constraints getting called at roughly the 50 and the 70 megawatt, or the 50 megawatt limit. And our analysts that are looking at this data, just like you will be, are going to help us set those thresholds for the alerting so that you're able to benefit from their knowledge and experience of watching these patterns form and how to utilize this actual flow information. And you can see in this example, we're also showing a trip detected earlier in the day with a frequency event, and then you see Zimmer trip there at 9 a.m. So it's really putting together all of these pieces of actual fundamental information that is detecting this as rapidly as possible and giving you a complete set of information. This slide references a study that was done last fall, a joint study between MISO and PJM, and it really covers the top congested flow gates between the two that are affecting both. And what we want to show here is the amount of coverage we've got here, regardless of the voltage class. Right now we're at 50% coverage of all of these flow gates, and we expect that to increase by 10 to 20% as we march forward with our deployment. This is really to just make the point that we're trying to build out this network not in a haphazard or convenient way to us, but really driven by the market economics we're seeing and anticipate in the coming season. And the last example we'll look at here before we jump into the product is just looking at a trip. And what I wanted to point out here is how these different parts of our product work together. We have a system-wide detection system called a frequency event, and that is we've deployed frequency monitors throughout each interconnect, and we true them up to the same clock, and they detect deviations in frequency from 60 hertz off of the scheduled frequency, and then try and triangulate where things may have happened. And this will detect both line trips and power plant trips. And in this case, the real advantage of that is that, one, it augments our coverage. As I pointed out, we have about 45% of capacity covered. Well, the frequency event gives us 100% essentially. It allows us to make sure whatever we're missing at a facility level, we're catching at a system-wide level, and we can alert our customers that something has changed in the event and estimate the magnitude of that event and the locality. So the frequency event also works very quickly. We're taking several measurements per second, so the timeliness of that information is much faster than the power plant. So in this sequence of events, a frequency event tripped on the screen, and it estimated the locale here in southern Colorado. It turns out less than a minute later, we actually detected that it was 4 corners that had tripped, which is pretty normal for folks using our product. They're familiar with this pattern. What's different now is you can mouse over all the other lines in the 4 corners area and see now that this unit has tripped. In fact, 4 corners tripped twice that day earlier this week. You can see what's changing in the power flow. And it's something changing in terms of power flowing into Southern California, out of Palo Verde. Are any of the lines looking excessively loaded? Is there going to be other problems? Is this going to present some opportunity maybe for price separation that I can act on? And what does it mean to me in my position in the market? Again, trying to make this stuff, take the guesswork out of it and just tell you what's going on. And then lastly here, just a simple demonstration of how to get the historical data out of the product. So looking essentially, as I said before, if you see data in a chart, you're going to see export. And I just did an example here of pulling out one transmission line out of Homer City here that connects with New York. And within a couple minutes, built a 5 years, year-on-year chart showing how this line has been loaded for a month over the past several years. So it's accessible data, easy to get at. We want you to mine the history and take advantage of it. That's all part of the product offering. And with that, I'll jump into the product here, and we'll do a quick demonstration so you can see it live. And then I'll turn things over to Natalia to talk about how we use it analytically. So this interface should look pretty familiar to current PowerRT users. It's essentially a map with blinky dots on it, which we've been doing for over 10 years. What we've added to it, as I mentioned, we've created a Windows environment. So you can now size your windows, lay them out however you choose, and then save those configurations so that every time you log in, the product will look as the way you want it, the way you left it, the way you prefer. Additionally, you can customize the geographic view. Why don't I zoom up to the PJM region, and then let's take a look at the transmission data. So through the layer control here, you can simply turn on transmission lines and substations and get a quick view of what our coverage is. And while you're all digesting that and just taking a peek, I'm going to pull up the legend and explain what we're looking at. So the transmission lines, a couple of things to note right off the bat. If there are thin gray lines, it's lines that we don't have actual data on and we're just providing as reference. So you know where is this line connected to, is it 138, 345, what have you. The lines that we have actual live data on are colored triangles, and the pointy end of the triangle indicates the directional flow. So that's this is flowing from west to east in this legend example, and similarly on the map. The color of the line indicates its loading level as a percentile of the last 5 years of operating data, or however much history we have for that line. We don't have operating line limits for all the transmission lines, so we pick a relative scale on which to color them. So essentially, the brownish reds are showing that it's operating at a very high level compared to its history, and the green at a more normal level. We are working to get operating line limits from each of the ISOs and NERC security coordinators. So we'll be adding those in for PJM in New York within the next release or two. And then we're working with each one of them. We have to work through some confidentiality provisions with each of the ISOs in order to include that data. But then we'll have the operating limits as well. And they may be daily limits like PJM, or they might be seasonal limits that are published as part of the NERC guidelines. So that's a forthcoming enhancement. The key is to understand what the color means now and what it doesn't mean so you don't misinterpret it. A couple of things in terms of functionality to point out. You can, one of the things I like to do is just turn off and look at only the high voltage lines and sort of take a quick scan at what the day looks like with just looking at 500 kV and above and looking for things that are anomalous colors or directional flows that seem different. For example, this Rockport-Sullivan line here flowing positive when it usually flows in the other direction, and that's probably related to an outage here at Jefferson-Rockport. And taking a quick glance at what's going on at this level, and then you can drill down and build up the grid to the level of significance that you want to keep an eye on. We point out a few features. I think that makes a point in terms of the content and coverage. We've added this real-time chart up in the top left, and as I've been using it already, but I'll explain it, is if you mouse over anything, it essentially refreshes that chart to whatever you're moused over, whether it's a power plant or transmission line. And I think personally this is one of my favorite features of this release, because you can come in and just quickly scan over a whole bunch of things and kind of see what's going on. It works additionally with the alerts. So if you take a look at what's alerted lately, you can just quickly scan and see what the last few days are in terms of the time series to get a quick assessment of what you're looking at, both geographically as well as from a time perspective. The other component that's new is our new live data grid here. Down on the bottom left, we've got transmission line flows. And this is just a table of the same data that's coming through on the charts and the map. You can just see it now in a tabular form. I have it sorted by, has basic sorting and filtering capabilities. I have it sorted by descending timestamps so you can see the live data flowing through here. So it's one of the things that we've added is this filtering tool that allows you to do things like, let's say I just want to look at things that have changed by over 100 megawatts and apply that criteria. Let's say I want to do 150 megawatts. And anything that's changed by negative 150 megawatts. So basically if it's reverse direction or it's flowing in the opposite direction. And this will then keep that filter in place and just pass all of the data updates through it, so you're really restricting your use, the amount of the volume of information that you're being confronted with. And many of the features and enhancements that we're working on are trying to do that, try and pull out the significant data and make it more obvious to you, and also let you filter down the data so you can do it to just the assets, regions, or conditions, criteria that you want to see. Let me drill down and show you some of the new features that are in the detail screen now. So along with the generation data, which you see in the top chart here, we'll also have all of the power flows to all the connected transmission lines at that facility, whether it's a power plant like Homer City or it's a substation. We'll have all of those identified and charted out for you. There's been a major charting enhancement that lets you look at more data at a time or enter your own custom dates, and a control to basically change the time scaling on the chart and manipulate it so that you can see different time windows or larger time windows. And as I mentioned before, export features where you simply select the type of output and you can pull that data down. One thing that I mentioned looking at the PowerPoint slides, I'll show you here as well, is you can go back in time and pretty much pick out any time window you want. So I look at something like 2004 to 2005. There is a restriction of a maximum of 1 year, 365 days right now in terms of what you can pull at once. We are working on some performance enhancements to remove that restriction so that you can look at a longer period of time and chart it and export it. So the point I want to make is you have access to that history now, and we want you to use it. We want ideas and feedback on what you'd like to see and what types of analytics you want around it. While that chart's pulling the data up there, I'll just move down and show you that the same real-time data is now displayed in tabular form for everything at this facility. So you can see the current loading levels of each of the lines, changes, deltas everywhere. If you want to navigate to any of these other lines, you can simply click through on any of these hyperlinks and navigate the from to and work your way through a chain of branches that way as well. Additionally, on the side, we put the alerts, some of the static reference data, such as who owns the plant, what its capacity, what units are there. These are just parked over on the side to try and minimize the real estate for data that doesn't change very often. And then lastly, we've created these as all sort of movable, collapsible, expandable components. So you can set the page up differently. Many of these features are just in preparation for adding more content. When we put in the real-time ticks, the 5-minute, 10-minute, hourly real-time, day-ahead, shadow prices, we want these controls in place so you can access them and customize your streams accordingly to handle a larger amount of information. The last feature I want to make you aware of is just the search feature. As we add more and more things into this, it gets harder and harder to find things. So the search feature now searches across power plants, substations, everything. So let's, for example, you're looking for that Monticello line that we talked about before. You simply start typing and you'll get presented with a pick list, and you can quickly select that. It'll bring you to that facility, and you can take a look at it. You can turn on the other layers around it so you can see its context better and quickly find what you're looking for. I think I've covered all the basic functionality that we've got in the product right now. So with that, I'm going to come back to the presentation and turn things over to Natalia so that she can show you how our analyst team uses the data. Natalia, ready to go? I'll make you presenter.
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Bill.
Turn it over to you.
Perfect. All right. So on PowerQ side, we use transmission RT pretty much on daily basis to recalibrate our model, our new model here that's going to kick off in the next couple of weeks. So essentially, we pull the transmission as well as generation data on a daily basis. And that allows us to pretty much recalibrate our model on the previous days down to a very granular level. So we're able to identify and capture the direction of the flows as well as the thresholds at which congestion occurs.
Natalia, how often do you see a deviation from actual, from what your forecasted flows were from the model, and how much of an influence does it have each day when you're recalibrating the model to actual? Do you see, occasional changes, or do you see sort of significant corrections in the modeling based on actuals versus estimated power flows? Do you have some sense of that?
Well, it definitely depends on the day and the model run and the certain conditions in the market. So it depends on all the outages that we have, generation outages or transmission outages. So for instance, like in this example, what we do is that we try to match the actual previous day flows and actual prices to the real-time prices and real-time power flows that we grab from transmission RT on a daily basis. And that also allows us to pretty much capture the congestion and the shadow prices that were seen by the market in the previous day. So what transmission RT pretty much helps us do is that identify the thresholds at which the congestion occurred. For instance, if it was within 98% of the line limit, or if it came a bit earlier, 94%, and that helps the model train on daily basis, and pretty much just gives us a good gauge at when the congestion occurred, what the parameters are going to be for the bulk day and for the next day. We'll still typically use it as an in-house tool. For instance, if we see certain transmission outages scheduled down in the future, month or two down the line, we're able to look up the last time those lines went out, what congestion was associated with those outages, and using transmission RT, you can pretty much go back in time and look at what the power flows were at the time around those lines, and at what levels the congestion actually occurred. So it's also like from a historical perspective, it gives a good gauge of what happened and what monitored lines were at the time, and how to look at the congestion in the future as well.
And then you're rolling this up to basically an influence, either bearish or bullish, on the hub price. Is that where this gets aggregated?
Correct, because we're able to capture the shadow prices, and that gets translated into an on-peak average MCCs for the West-East at the 9. That's what we're concentrating on with the new release at this point. So that's pretty much how we look at it from the analyst point of view on daily basis. So it's a combination of the CM model run as well as the transmission RT that gives us a better understanding of the congestion patterns.
And then just for everybody on the call, that the results of this analysis that Natalia and her team perform is actually part of what's called our PowerQ product, which is separate from what we just looked at, and that's a daily forecast of the battle day ahead, along with a very in-depth analysis and a briefing from Natalia and her team about what the driving factors are on that price forecast and where the risks are associated with the forecast. So it's a complementary product, but we really wanted to show how these things work together today so that you can see a very clear case on how someone running a market simulation model is taking this input and turning it into an opinion around which way the hub prices are moving and how congestion will affect the hub prices.
Very much.
Anything
anything
else?
No, that's pretty much it on our side. So I'm going to pass along the back to you, Bill.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Well, I think that really comes to a wrap here. I just want to give everyone a sense of what the plan is for this year and talk about our roadmap. We've released this product that we just looked at. It was actually, we had it out in testing in October here with a handful of people, and now it's widely available to our customers as an upgrade from the PowerRT. Our development team is working on, as I mentioned, building out the network to increase our coverage. And we'll be releasing an update here later this month that gives you alerting capabilities to set your own alerts. After that, we'll be focused on watch lists and other sort of ways to filter the data. In the spring, our focus will turn to including all the ISO price information. I say price, but we'll actually be putting in all of the tie flows, power flows, as well as the load numbers that the ISOs publish, with some features that allow you to use it, such as the ability to color code the map in a contour heat map-like thing, like presentation, more advanced charting tools. And then we'll move our attention to the events, constraints, maintenance schedules, and TLR events outside of the ISO region. Our hope is to get all that. We're trying very hard to get it all before summer so that you can utilize this information through the peak season. And then turning our attention to demand and building out demand monitoring capability late this year and into 2014. And with that, I think we've covered more than enough. It's probably a lot.
I think we have some questions. We have some questions for you, Bill.
So, Bill, just a few questions. So how often does the data update when you're looking at the screen?
So the data updates on the same intervals as the power plant data, which varies according to time of day and the facility. Under normal operating circumstances, with nothing unusual happening, we get readings approximately every 30 minutes. Some facilities in off-peak hours will go once an hour. Each one of the devices in the field has some capability to analyze what we call transient events. So if there was a radical change from one reading to the next, the unit will wake up and transmit that data immediately to Genscape. So things like outages, when it goes to 0, when there's a significant change, percentage change in the reading, the monitor will communicate that immediately. So, so at worst, it's 30 to 60 minutes off peak, and you know, during peak hours, if things are moving, we're getting more data points throughout the hour. So, any other questions, Chris?
Yep, a few more questions. Is the could you just describe the technology that's used to do the monitoring? Is it thermal measurements, EMF, or different technique?
Right. The predominant one is EMF detection, and as I mentioned before, these are deployed near a transmission line right away, and we calibrate that electromagnetic frequency signal either to a power plant output historical data series, or in some cases to power flow case resolution if it's a line, over time, and maintain that calibration. There can be reasons that degrade that signal, anything from, in some cases, weather patterns, vegetation growth. You know, somebody drives their truck into the monitor and we have to go out and replace it. We've got thousands of these in the field, and over 10 years of maintaining and operating these with very tight service level agreements, where if it's a critical facility, we usually have someone back out in the field to that place within 24 hours. If it's non-critical, it might be 48 or 72 hours. So we have a field team that's really experienced in doing that and has worked in all weather conditions, has procured easements from a whole variety of landowners in urban and rural areas, and we've got a pretty deep operating experience there.
Okay, now in terms of the software itself, does it reside on the client server, or is it in a centrally located server?
Well, there's different pieces. Each one of the measuring devices has its own firmware in it that does certain functions. We've got, we then aggregate the data into our data center, perform some algorithmic calculations to apply the calibration to turn that from you know, a signal measurement into a megawatt value, and then that's transmitted down to the browser that you see. And the only thing happening in the browser are just visual presentation things in terms of changing the color of something or painting a chart. So it's mostly server-based.
Okay, and you know, combined questions here. I mean, can you show transmission line outages and in maintenance, and kind of how do you monitor planned outages on the transmission line?
Right now, we're measuring actual. So whether the line goes down for a planned event or a forced event, we're just capturing how much energy is flowing through that line. We are now collecting all of the outage schedules from the ISOs, but we haven't put them into the product yet. That is scheduled for release later this spring, where you'll see the planned schedules that are announced versus the actuals. I think that's an important thing to note, is we're measuring physical phenomenon and showing that to you. So in some cases, we'll know the reason why that measurement is happening the way it is. In some cases, we won't. But you'll know for certain that it's actually happening. And if you have doubts, that's something where we often get requests from customers that say, hey, is this really correct? And we will take that question from our customer care group and run it through our quality control team and make double sure that there's no problems with our measurement devices. And if there is a problem with one of our measurement devices, we'll mark it on the interface as a low confidence in the information. And you'll see that either through the field that says confidence level, high, medium, or low, or you'll see an icon on the interface become a grayed out transparent, and that's an indicator that there's a quality problem right there, and to be suspect of the information until we get it straightened out. We'll put a little note in the detail screen saying something like monitor maintenance pending, or we need to recalibrate the infrared camera. So we try and disclose that stuff and make sure you're not making decisions off of that data. It's usually a very small percentage of the total, but there's always something.
And that, yeah, and just to add to that as well, I guess with the release of the watches and the alerting, you'll be able to set it up so that you are alerting on commercially sensitive planned outages. You can be watching to see when they come back online or when they go down. Exactly.
You bet. Mm-hmm.
And does the product include weather information as an overlay?
Yes, we have some basic weather information, temperature gradient map that's available. We have a satellite, so you can see things like precip, and there's basically a radar image and a satellite image, and then there's a few reference maps that are published by, I want to say AWS, that are available as a report. So it's some basic weather things. We are looking at trying to enable more location-specific weather, mostly because of things like we get line limits from PJM, and the line limit is dependent on the ambient air temperature around the line. So we want to be able to reference the local temperature and say this is the applicable line limit at this time for this temperature. So we are looking into that, but we haven't built that into the product yet.
I think that concludes the questions with that.
Great question. And if you're interested in having a customer visit, where we come out and talk to you about how you can use this, if you want to trial it, please contact us. I really enjoyed the questions. It's great to see how many folks have attended today, and we hope you get some great value out of this. We're pretty excited about the roadmap we have ahead, and hopefully everyone will be able to take advantage of that, and we'll have a great year. Thank you very much.